Hey everyone, welcome to my channel from start to now. If you love uncovering hidden stories from history, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss our future videos. Let's dive in. Imagine standing where East meets West, a land of empires, revolutions, and secrets written in blood and gold. This is Turkey. Civilizations were born here, empires clashed, and history was reshaped. But beyond the landscapes and tourist brochures lies a story most people have never heard. Today, we uncover Turkey's hidden history, mighty empires, and shocking revolutions. By the end, you'll never see Turkey the same way again. When you think of Turkey, the first images that often come to mind are its stunning landscapes, the bustling streets of Istanbul, or the turquoise waters of Mediterranean. But what many people don't realize is that Turkey is far more than a travel destination or a modern nation state. It is, in many ways, the very crossroads of human civilization. Imagine a land where continents meet, where Asia merges with Europe, and where the cultural, political, and religious currents of countless societies have flowed for thousands of years. This unique position has shaped Turkey's entire history, influencing empires, ideas, and people in ways that are still visible today. Its geography alone tells part of the story. The narrow straits of the Bosporus connect the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, while the Anatolian plateau stretches across the heart of the country, offering both fertile land and strategic advantage. For millennia, this region has been a hub for trade, migration, conquest, and cultural exchange. It is no coincidence that some of the world's earliest civilizations flourished here. The Hittites, one of the first great powers of Anatolia, thrived more than 3,000 years ago. They built fortified cities, developed complex legal systems, and established diplomatic relationships that stretched far beyond their borders. Their presence alone reminds us that Turkey's significance is not a modern phenomenon. It has been at the center of human development for thousands of years, and yet history in this land is layered and intricate. After the Hittites, other civilizations arrived, each adding their own threads to the rich tapestry of the region. The Phrygians, famous for their legendary King Midas, the Lydians, credited with inventing coinage, and the Persians, who extended their influence across Anatolia, all contributed to a cultural and economic landscape that was constantly evolving. Each wave of migration and conquest didn't erase the previous one. Instead, it combined, creating a complex mosaic of languages, traditions, and beliefs. Then came the Greeks, who established thriving city-states along the western coast of Anatolia, known as Ionia. These cities became centers of philosophy, science, and art. Thinkers like Heraclitus, who pondered the nature of existence, walked the streets of Ephesus, debating ideas that would echo through history. Trade flourished, art and literature thrived, and knowledge spread not just across the region, but to the wider Mediterranean world. Yet even as Greek influence grew, the land remained a meeting point for empires. Alexander the Great's campaigns brought Hellenistic culture to Anatolia, blending with the existing traditions of the region. Cities were rebuilt, roads were constructed, and cultural exchange reached unprecedented levels. Turkey was no longer just a series of local civilizations. It had become a crossroads where East met West, where ideas, people, and goods flowed freely. This crossroads position became even more pronounced during the Roman and Byzantine eras. Anatolia was integrated into the Roman Empire, and cities like Pergamon, Antioch, and Ephesus became centers of administration, commerce, and learning. Roman roads connected the region to the farthest corners of the empire, allowing armies, merchants, and scholars to traverse the land with remarkable efficiency. When the empire split into East and West, the Byzantine Empire emerged, with Constantinople as its capital. For over 1,000 years, Constantinople was the beating heart of this empire, controlling trade routes, political power, and cultural influence. Its location on the Bosporus made it a literal bridge between continents. Ships from the Black Sea could pass to the Mediterranean, while armies and merchants crossed the land routes connecting Europe and Asia. Religion, art, and knowledge converged here in ways that were unparalleled. Churches, libraries, and marketplaces became hubs where different civilizations intersected, and this exchange shaped not only the Byzantine Empire but the wider world. Yet Turkey's position as a crossroads didn't just mean commerce and culture, it also meant conflict. For centuries, Anatolia was a battleground where empires clashed for control of trade routes, fertile lands, and strategic positions. From Persian invasions to Crusader campaigns, from Mongol incursions to the expansion of the Ottoman Empire, this land witnessed battles that determined the fate of entire regions. And every time a new power rose, it brought with it new ideas, new technologies, and new forms of governance, enriching the cultural fabric of the region. The Ottoman Empire, which emerged in the late 13th century, perhaps exemplifies Turkey's role as a crossroads better than any other. The Ottomans controlled vast territories across 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa, and ruled over a mosaic of peoples, languages, and religions. Their empire was both a political and cultural crossroads, bringing together traditions from the Byzantine, Persian, Arab, and European worlds. Ottoman cities like Istanbul became cosmopolitan centers where merchants from Venice, scholars from Baghdad, and diplomats from London mingled in bustling marketplaces. The architecture, cuisine, music, and literature of the Ottoman era all reflect this incredible fusion of influences. And even after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, Turkey's position as a bridge between cultures remained. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk's reforms in the early 20th century modernized the nation while still acknowledging the layers of history beneath it. He drew on both Eastern and Western ideas, creating a secular, progressive republic that retained its unique geographical and cultural position. When we consider Turkey's history, it becomes clear that its role as a crossroads is not just about geography. It's about how ideas, religions, and cultures have collided and blended over millennia. From the Hittites to the Greeks, from the Byzantines to the Ottomans, and from empires to the modern republic, Turkey has been a place where human civilization has continuously intersected. This is why Turkey is so fascinating to study. It is a living laboratory of human history, showing us how societies interact, adapt, and evolve when positioned at the meeting point of continents. Even today, the echoes of this crossroads are everywhere. Ancient ruins sit alongside modern cities. Byzantine churches are converted into mosques, and centuries old marketplaces thrive in Istanbul's streets. Turkey's cuisine, language, and art all bear the marks of countless influences, reminding us that this land has always been a meeting point for the world. Understanding Turkey's history as a crossroads helps us see the broader patterns of human civilization. Trade, migration, conquest, and cultural exchange are forces that shape societies everywhere, but few places illustrate these dynamics as vividly as Turkey. Its story teaches us that geography can dictate history, that location can influence culture, and that civilizations are never isolated. They are always interacting, borrowing, and transforming. So when you explore Turkey, whether physically or through its history, remember that you are walking through more than a country. You are walking through the meeting point of continents, the convergence of empires, and the intersection of human ideas. Every stone, every ruin, every street tells the story of a land that has connected the world for thousands of years and continues to do so today. When you look at the history of Turkey, one thing becomes immediately clear. This land has been the stage for some of the most powerful empires world has ever seen. Each empire left its mark, not just in the form of grand architecture or political systems, but in the very culture, traditions, and identity of the region. To understand Turkey, you need to understand the rise and fall of these mighty empires, because their legacies are woven into every corner of this land, shaping the world far beyond its borders. Let's begin with the Hittites, one of the earliest known empires in Anatolia. They were remarkable for their time, building fortified cities, developing advanced legal codes, and mastering ironworking long before many other civilizations. The Hittites established a network of diplomacy and alliances, often communicating with distant powers like Egypt in ways that were unprecedented for the ancient world. Imagine living in a time when written correspondence between empires was rare, yet the Hittites managed to navigate complex political landscapes, negotiate treaties, and even go to war with some of the most powerful civilizations of their era. Their empire eventually declined, partly due to invasions and internal instability, but their influence endured, laying the groundwork for later civilizations in the region. After the Hittites came a succession of kingdoms and empires that continued to shape Anatolia, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. The Phrygians, known for their legendary King Midas, brought a distinct culture and mythology that still captivates us today. The Lydians introduced the concept of coinage, revolutionizing trade and economy not just in Anatolia, but across the ancient world. These early empires may seem distant to us now, but they set the stage for the rise of even more powerful states. Then came the Greeks and the Hellenistic kingdoms. Greek city-states along the western coast of Anatolia, particularly in Ionia, became centers of learning, philosophy, and art. But it wasn't just cultural influence that made these empires remarkable. It was also their military strategies and organizational skills. Alexander the Great's conquest of the region brought about a fusion of Greek and local cultures, spreading Hellenistic ideas across Anatolia and creating a new era of political and cultural influence. After Alexander's death, his generals divided the empire, and Anatolia became a battleground for competing Hellenistic kingdoms, each striving for dominance. This constant struggle for power highlights a recurring theme in Turkey's history. Empires rise, reach their peak, and eventually fall, but their impact is lasting. The Romans recognized the strategic importance of Anatolia and incorporated it into their empire, transforming it into a vital region for administration, trade, and military operations. Roman rule brought remarkable infrastructure, including roads, aqueducts, and monumental buildings that still stand today. Cities like Pergamon and Ephesus thrived under Roman influence, becoming centers of art, literature, and philosophy. The Pax Romana allowed commerce to flourish, and the blending of Roman and local traditions created a unique cultural landscape that would influence the region for centuries. Yet, even the mighty Roman Empire eventually divided, giving rise to the Byzantine Empire in the east, with Constantinople as its capital. The Byzantine Empire is often remembered for its incredible longevity and resilience. For over 1,000 years it survived invasions, internal strife, and political upheaval, maintaining its position as a major power in the Mediterranean world. Its emperors wielded immense influence, not only over their own territories, but across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. The Byzantine Empire's accomplishments were remarkable. Architectural wonders like the Hagia Sophia, sophisticated legal codes such as the Justinian Code, and a complex bureaucracy that managed an empire spanning 3 continents. But empires, no matter how powerful, are rarely permanent. Constant wars with Persians, Arabs, and later Crusaders, coupled with internal corruption and succession crises, gradually weakened the Byzantine state. By the 15th century, the once mighty empire had shrunk considerably, leaving Constantinople vulnerable to the rising power of the Ottomans. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 was a turning point, marking not just the end of Byzantium, but the rise of a new empire that would dominate the region for centuries. The Ottoman Empire, which began as a small Anatolian principality, expanded with astonishing speed, eventually controlling vast territories in Europe, Asia, and Africa. What made the Ottomans so remarkable was their ability to govern a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire with sophistication and pragmatism. They combined military prowess with administrative skill, creating systems of taxation, legal structures, and governance that kept the empire functioning for hundreds of years. At its peak, the Ottoman Empire was a global power, rivaling the great empires of Europe and Asia. The sultans, such as Suleiman the Magnificent, were not only military leaders but also patrons of art, architecture, and literature, leaving behind a legacy that continues to define Turkish culture today. Yet, even the Ottomans were not immune to decline. Wars, economic challenges, internal corruption, and the pressures of modernization eventually eroded their power. By the 19th century, the empire was struggling to maintain control over its vast territories, earning the grim nickname, the sick man of Europe. And yet, even in decline, the Ottoman Empire's impact on the world was profound. Its legal, cultural, and architectural contributions continued to influence the region long after its political power waned. Across millennia, the story of empires in Turkey follows a fascinating cycle. They rise through innovation, conquest, and strategic brilliance, reach a peak of cultural and political achievement, and eventually fall due to internal weaknesses, external pressures, or changing times. But what's remarkable is how each empire leaves a legacy that shapes the next. The Hittites influenced the Phrygians and Lydians, the Greeks and Romans left a lasting imprint on the Byzantines, and the Byzantine traditions were absorbed and transformed by the Ottomans. Even after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the foundation it provided allowed the modern Turkish Republic to emerge. Understanding these cycles helps us see history not as a series of disconnected events, but as a continuous story, with each empire contributing to the complex mosaic that is Turkey today. Walking through the streets of modern Istanbul, or exploring the ruins of Ephesus, Pergamon, or Hattusa, you can literally feel these layers of history. You see the grandeur of each empire in their architecture, in their art, and in the cultural practices that survived for centuries. And it's not just the rulers and elites who shaped these empires, it's also the ordinary people, the farmers, merchants, soldiers, and artisans, whose lives and labor built civilizations. Their stories are often untold, but their contributions were essential in sustaining the power, culture, and identity of these empires. The rise and fall of empires in Turkey is also a lesson in resilience and adaptation. Civilizations didn't simply vanish when conquered. They adapted, merged, and contributed to new societies. This continuous blending of influences is what gives Turkey its unique character, a rich tapestry woven from the achievements, failures, and legacies of countless empires. And it's why Turkey's history remains endlessly fascinating. Each empire offers insights into human ambition, governance, culture, and the consequences of power. By studying how these empires rose and fell, we gain a deeper understanding of history itself and perhaps of the forces that continue to shape the world today. From the Hittites to the Ottomans, from ancient city-states to sprawling empires, Turkey has been a central stage for human civilization, witnessing the grandeur and fragility of power in equal measure. It reminds us that history is alive, that it's layered, and that the echoes of past empires are still felt in the streets, culture, and identity of modern Turkey. Every stone, every ruin, every monument is a testament to the ambition, creativity, and resilience of these mighty civilizations, showing us that even in decline, their impact can endure for centuries, shaping the future in ways that are both visible and subtle, and that the story of Turkey's empires is far from just a tale of conquest. It's a story of human ingenuity, adaptation, and the relentless passage of time, a continuous thread connecting the past to the present, teaching us lessons about power, culture, and the enduring legacy of civilizations. When you think about the history of Turkey, it's impossible not to think about the Ottoman Empire. For over 6 centuries, this empire was one of the most powerful and influential states in the world, stretching across 3 continents and shaping the destinies of millions of people. What makes the Ottoman Empire so fascinating isn't just its longevity or its military conquests, but the sheer complexity of its governance, culture, and society. It was an empire that managed to combine tremendous power with an incredible degree of sophistication, balancing diversity, administration, and innovation in ways that few other empires in history could. Imagine an empire that spanned Southeast Europe, Western Asia, and North Africa, encompassing people of different religions, languages, and cultures. The Ottomans developed a system that allowed this vast mosaic to function relatively smoothly for centuries. Their approach to governance was pragmatic and flexible. They allowed various communities to maintain their own traditions and legal systems under a framework known as the millet system, which provided a degree of autonomy to different religious and ethnic groups while keeping the empire unified. This was a remarkable feat because managing such diversity has historically been one of the biggest challenges for any empire. But it wasn't just the political system that was impressive. The Ottoman military was one of the most advanced and disciplined forces of its time. From the elite janissaries, who were trained from a young age to be loyal to the Sultan, to the navy that dominated the Mediterranean for centuries, the Ottomans combined innovation, strategy, and sheer determination to expand and protect their empire. Every conquest wasn't just a matter of military might. It involved careful planning, intelligence, and diplomacy. And then there's the cultural aspect. The Ottomans were patrons of the arts in a way that transformed cities like Istanbul into centers of beauty, learning, and creativity. The architecture of the empire, with its grand mosques, palaces, and bridges, reflects a blend of Islamic, Byzantine, Persian, and even European influences. The Blue Mosque, with its 6 minarets and intricate tiles, and the Topkapi Palace, home to sultans and their courts for centuries, are not just tourist attractions. They are monuments to an empire that understood the power of culture as much as the power of the sword. The Ottoman Empire also made significant contributions to science, literature, music, and philosophy. Scholars translated works from other cultures, astronomers studied the stars, and poets wrote verses that are still celebrated today. The empire was a hub where East met West, and where ideas flowed freely, influencing regions far beyond its borders. Trade, too, was a lifeline of the empire. The Ottomans controlled major trade routes connecting Europe and Asia, which allowed them to benefit economically while also facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. From spices and silk to metals and textiles, the empire was at the center of a network that linked continents and cultures, making Istanbul one of the most cosmopolitan cities of the time. But like all great empires, the Ottomans were not without their challenges. Managing such a vast and diverse territory required constant vigilance. Internal power struggles, succession crises, and palace intrigues were common, and they often shaped the course of the empire as much as wars with foreign powers did. The life of a sultan was both privileged and precarious, and political maneuvering in the palace could determine the fate of entire regions. And yet, Despite these challenges, the empire endured. One of the reasons for its resilience was the ability to adapt. The Ottomans were not rigid. They learned from other civilizations, incorporated new technologies, and reformed their systems when necessary. This flexibility allowed the empire to survive where many others would have fallen much sooner. Religion played a central role in the empire's identity, but it was also a tool of cohesion. Islam provided a unifying framework, but the Ottomans were careful to allow other faiths to coexist, maintaining relative stability in a region with deep religious diversity. This balance between faith, law, and governance contributed to the longevity of the empire, and yet the grandeur of the Ottoman Empire was not just in its political or military systems. It was in the daily life of its people, in the vibrant markets, the festivals, the music, and the culinary traditions that continue to influence Turkey today. From the bustling Grand Bazaar in Istanbul to the small towns of Anatolia, life under the Ottomans was rich and layered, a reflection of an empire that valued both order and culture. Economically, the empire experienced both prosperity and challenges. Trade, agriculture, and craftsmanship thrived, and Ottoman coins circulated widely, influencing economies beyond its borders. Yet managing such a vast territory also meant facing logistical challenges, inflation, and the pressures of maintaining a large military and administrative system. These economic realities sometimes strained the empire, contributing to periods of reform and innovation. And speaking of reform, the Ottoman Empire's later centuries show a remarkable willingness to change. Faced with rising European powers and internal pressures, the Ottomans initiated reforms in administration, education, and military organization, trying to modernize while preserving their identity. This period, known as the Tanzimat, reflects the complexity and resilience of the empire, its recognition that survival required adaptation without losing core principles. The legacy of the Ottoman Empire is visible even today. Istanbul's skyline, with its domes and minarets, the preserved palaces, and the cultural practices all reflect centuries of Ottoman influence. But beyond the tangible, there is also a legacy of governance, diplomacy, and cultural fusion that continues to shape Turkey and its surrounding regions. What makes the Ottoman Empire truly extraordinary is how it managed to combine power with sophistication, conquest with culture, and diversity with unity. Its story is not just one of rulers and wars. It is the story of people, ideas, and civilizations interacting over centuries. And even as the empire declined in the 19th and early 20th centuries, it left behind a foundation that enabled the modern Turkish Republic to emerge, drawing lessons from both the triumphs and failures of the past. The Ottomans teach us about the delicate balance of empire, how power, culture, and governance must work together to sustain a civilization, and how even the mightiest states must adapt or face decline. Their grandeur was not only in the territories they controlled, but in the richness of their society, the diversity of their culture, and the resilience they demonstrated across centuries of challenges. From the magnificent architecture to the sophisticated administration, from the battlefield to the marketplace, the Ottoman Empire was a civilization that understood the complexities of human society and mastered them in ways that are still admired today, showing us that true grandeur lies not just in power, but in the ability to govern wisely, create beauty, and sustain a culture that can endure across centuries, influencing generations long after the empire itself has passed into history. As the Ottoman Empire entered its final decades, it faced immense challenges. Centuries of power, culture, and sophistication could not shield it from the forces of modernity, war, and nationalism. World War I was devastating, and the once mighty empire found itself on the brink of collapse. Occupying forces advanced into Anatolia, borders were uncertain, and a sense of crisis permeated the region. It was in this moment of upheaval that Mustafa Kemal, later known as Atatürk, emerged, a military leader, visionary and revolutionary whose ideas would completely transform Turkey. Atatürk's journey began on the battlefield, but his vision went far beyond military victory. He understood that reclaiming sovereignty was just the first step. The real challenge was building a nation, modern, independent, and capable of standing alongside the Western powers. Following the War of Independence, Atatürk set out on an ambitious program of reform that touched every aspect of society. He believed that modernization was not simply about politics or economics. It was about transforming the mindset of an entire nation, creating citizens capable of thinking critically, embracing science, and participating in the governance of their country. One of his most significant reforms was the adoption of a secular legal system. For centuries, the Ottoman legal system had been intertwined with Islamic law. Atatürk understood that for Turkey to modernize, it needed a legal framework that was universal, codified, and aligned with contemporary standards. By introducing civil, criminal, and commercial codes inspired by European systems, he created a foundation for equality, justice, and governance that was radically different from the past. Alongside legal reform, education became a cornerstone of Atatürk's vision. He recognized that literacy, critical thinking, and scientific knowledge were essential for national development. Schools were restructured, and curricula were modernized to emphasize mathematics, science, history, and languages. He replaced the old Arabic script with the Latin alphabet, a move that dramatically increased literacy rates and allowed Turkey to connect more effectively with the Western world. The transformation of education was not merely functional, it was deeply symbolic. By giving citizens the tools to engage with the modern world, Atatürk was redefining what it meant to be Turkish in a rapidly changing global context. Women's rights were another area where Atatürk implemented radical changes. In a society long governed by patriarchal traditions, women were granted the right to vote, to hold office, and to participate fully in public life. This was revolutionary, not just in Turkey, but in the broader region, sending a clear message that modernization required inclusivity and equality. Social reforms went hand in hand with political reforms. The abolition of the caliphate, the replacement of traditional dress codes, and the introduction of new social norms were all part of Atatürk's strategy to create a secular, progressive society. These changes were not superficial. They represented a fundamental shift in identity, encouraging citizens to think of themselves as part of a modern nation rather than subjects of an empire. Economically, Atatürk pursued policies that would make Turkey self-sufficient and capable of industrial growth. Infrastructure projects, investments in agriculture, and the establishment of state enterprises were all aimed at reducing dependency on foreign powers while fostering domestic innovation. By encouraging industrialization and modernization of the economy, he sought to give Turkey the material foundation to support a strong, independent state. The transformation was not without challenges. Many resisted the rapid changes, and the tension between tradition and modernity was palpable. But Atatürk's leadership combined pragmatism with vision. He understood the importance of public engagement, of communicating the purpose and necessity of reforms to a population that had endured centuries of imperial rule and sudden upheaval. Language itself became a tool of revolution. By reforming the Turkish language and simplifying the alphabet, Atatürk created a sense of national unity and identity while making education and communication more accessible to ordinary citizens. This was not just about literacy, It was about creating a shared culture and enabling people to participate actively in public life. Ataturk's approach to governance was equally visionary. He established a republic, replacing monarchy with a system in which the people had sovereignty. The new constitution enshrined principles of democracy, secularism, and national unity. While the transition required careful management and sometimes strict enforcement, the result was a nation capable of self-determination, breaking decisively with centuries of imperial rule. Culture, too, was a focus of modernization. Arts, music, literature, and historical scholarship were encouraged, reflecting both Turkey's rich heritage and its aspiration to engage with the contemporary world. Museums, theaters, and cultural institutions were established or expanded, ensuring that citizens could experience both the depth of their own history and the vibrancy of global cultural developments. International relations were also reshaped under Atatürk. By adopting a foreign policy based on neutrality, diplomacy, and strategic alliances, Turkey avoided entanglement in the conflicts that were consuming much of the world while asserting itself as a sovereign state capable of independent decision-making. This careful balance of domestic reform and international strategy ensured that Turkey could modernize without sacrificing its independence or identity. The results of Atatürk's revolution were profound. Within a single generation, Turkey was transformed from a fractured, war-torn region into a cohesive, modern nation-state. Infrastructure, education, governance, and social norms were all redefined, creating a foundation that continues to influence Turkish society today. But beyond the tangible reforms, perhaps the most remarkable legacy of Atatürk was the mindset he fostered, a belief in progress, rationality, and national pride, combined with an understanding that modernization required both continuity and change. The story of Turkey's revolution under Atatürk is also a reminder that profound social transformation is possible even in societies shaped by centuries of tradition and empire. It shows us how visionary leadership, coupled with practical reforms, can fundamentally alter the trajectory of a nation. And it teaches us that modernization is not merely about adopting new technologies or institutions. It is about cultivating an informed, engaged, and empowered citizenry capable of sustaining change across generations. Atatürk's legacy continues to resonate not only in Turkey but across the world, offering lessons on leadership, nation building, and the possibilities of reform. His approach combined respect for history with a clear-eyed vision for the future, demonstrating that revolutions are not just about overthrowing the past, but about creating systems, institutions, and societies that can endure and flourish. By examining this period in Turkish history, we see the power of ideas, strategy, and vision. We see how one leader, guided by a deep understanding of his people and the global context, was able to transform a nation, creating a bridge between centuries of imperial legacy and a modern, independent state. And we see how the principles of secularism, education, equality, and national unity can serve as a foundation for enduring stability and growth. In many ways, Atatürk's revolution was both the culmination of Turkey's long historical journey and the starting point for its modern identity. It reconciled the legacies of empires, the experiences of centuries, and the aspirations of a new generation, showing that history is not merely a record of the past, but a living process that continues to shape the present and the future, and that the story of Turkey's modernization under Atatürk is a testament to the transformative power of vision, courage, and unwavering commitment to progress, illustrating how a nation can reinvent itself while preserving the essence of its identity, creating a model of resilience, adaptability, and forward thinking that continues to inspire and inform the course of history today. When we talk about the history of Turkey, it's easy to focus on empires, sultans, battles, and political upheavals, but the real richness of the country's past lies in the untold stories of ordinary people and the enduring cultural legacy they left behind. These are the threads that connect the grand events of history to the daily lives of those who lived through them, and they are what make Turkey's story so human, so relatable, and so captivating. Imagine walking through the ancient streets of Istanbul, or the ruins of Ephesus, or the bustling towns of Anatolia, and realizing that every corner, every stone, every marketplace carries echoes of lives that shaped the history we often read about only in textbooks. The merchants who traveled along the Silk Road, the artisans who painstakingly crafted ceramics and textiles, the scholars who preserved knowledge in libraries, and the farmers who worked the land, these are the people whose stories are often overlooked, but whose contributions were vital to the growth and survival of civilizations across Turkey. Think about the bustling bazaars of the Ottoman Empire, for example. These were more than just places to buy and sell goods. They were centers of social life, culture, and exchange. Merchants from all over the empire, and even from distant lands like Venice, Baghdad, and Cairo, would converge in these marketplaces, bringing with them ideas, techniques, and traditions that enriched local culture. A simple transaction in the bazaar could lead to the spread of innovations, the mixing of artistic styles, or even the blending of languages and customs. Then there are the artisans and craftsmen whose skills defined the visual and material culture of the region. From intricate tile work in mosques to finely woven carpets and detailed manuscripts, their artistry reflected centuries of accumulated knowledge and aesthetic sensibility. These creations were not just decorative, they were expressions of identity, faith, and community, and they communicated messages about society, power, and beauty that survive to this day. Scholars and educators also played a pivotal role in shaping the intellectual landscape of Turkey. In the madrasas of the Ottoman Empire, students studied everything from theology and law to mathematics and astronomy. These centers of learning were responsible for preserving knowledge through times of upheaval, translating works from Greek, Arabic, and Persian sources, and advancing understanding in fields ranging from science to literature. Their work ensured that even as empires rose and fell, knowledge was not lost but adapted, refined, and passed on to future generations. And let's not forget the soldiers and ordinary citizens who defended their homes and communities, sometimes in the shadow of great empires, sometimes in the midst of revolutions. Their courage and resilience are woven into the story of Turkey, just as much as the actions of kings, sultans, and generals. From the defenders of Constantinople to the citizens who rallied under Atatürk's leadership during the War of Independence, these individuals demonstrated how the lives and choices of ordinary people can influence the course of history. Religion and spiritual life also played a crucial role in shaping the cultural legacy of Turkey. For centuries, this land was home to a variety of religious traditions, including Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, each leaving an imprint on architecture, literature, music, and daily life. Churches, synagogues, and mosques were not just places of worship. They were centers of community, learning, and artistic expression. They reflect the spiritual and cultural diversity of the region, and their preservation offers insight into how societies coexisted and interacted over time. Music, literature, and folklore are additional layers of Turkey's cultural heritage. Traditional music, from the haunting melodies of Anatolian folk songs to the elaborate compositions of Ottoman classical music, carries stories of love, struggle, triumph, and devotion. Folk tales and oral histories preserved in villages across the country provide another window into everyday life, social values, and moral lessons that transcended generations. These cultural expressions are more than entertainment. They are vessels of history, keeping alive the collective memory of a people who lived through extraordinary times. Culinary traditions are yet another reflection of Turkey's untold stories. The blending of flavors, ingredients, and cooking techniques from across the empire tells a story of trade, migration, and cultural exchange. Each dish, from hearty stews to delicate pastries, carries the imprint of centuries of interaction, innovation, and adaptation, offering a taste of the past in every bite. Language, too, is part of this legacy. The evolution of the Turkish language, especially the reforms under Atatürk, reflects the ongoing process of cultural transformation, connecting historical roots with modern identity. By studying the words, expressions, and literary works of different periods, we gain insight into the mindset, values, and world of those who lived in Turkey across the ages. One of the most fascinating aspects of Turkey's cultural legacy is how these untold stories intersect with the histories of empires. The grand narratives of conquest and governance are deeply intertwined with the experiences of everyday people. While we often focus on sultans and generals, the reality is that the functioning of these empires relied on the labor, skill, and ingenuity of ordinary citizens. Without their participation, empires could not flourish, and without their resilience, societies could not endure. Even in times of revolution and transformation, the voices of the people were instrumental. During Atatürk's modernization, the engagement of citizens in education, social reform, and public life was essential for the success of his ambitious program. These untold stories remind us that history is not a monolith. It is a mosaic of experiences, actions, and contributions, many of which remain hidden or overlooked. Archaeology continues to uncover secrets that shed light on these untold stories. Excavations across Anatolia and other regions of Turkey reveal the daily lives of past civilizations. The tools they used, the houses they lived in, the food they ate, and the rituals they practiced. Each discovery adds depth to our understanding of history, illustrating that human experience is complex, nuanced, and interconnected across time. And this cultural legacy is not static. It continues to influence modern Turkey. Architecture, art, music, cuisine, and traditions all carry echoes of the past while adapting to contemporary life. Festivals, public spaces, and local crafts preserve the memory of centuries of human creativity, ensuring that the contributions of ordinary people are remembered and celebrated alongside those of rulers and conquerors. In many ways, exploring Turkey's untold stories allows us to connect with history on a personal level. It reminds us that the past is not only about grand events or famous figures, but about the everyday experiences, struggles, and achievements of individuals who lived, loved, worked, and dreamed in a land that has always been extraordinary. By paying attention to these stories, we gain a richer, more nuanced understanding of Turkish history, one that goes beyond textbooks and monuments and reaches into the heart of human experience. Turkey's cultural legacy teaches us that history is alive, shaped not only by empires and revolutions, but by the lives of people who built, maintained, and transformed their communities over centuries. From the artisans and merchants to the scholars, soldiers, and ordinary citizens, their contributions created a tapestry of human experience that continues to inspire, inform, and connect us to the past, showing that the essence of history lies in the stories we tell, the knowledge we preserve, and the culture we carry forward, and that the untold stories of Turkey are a testament to the enduring creativity, resilience, and spirit of its people across generations. reminding us that the past is never truly gone, but lives on in the legacy of culture, tradition, and human endeavor that surrounds us today, shaping identity, values, and collective memory in ways both visible and subtle, and inspiring us to appreciate the depth, richness, and complexity of a civilization that has contributed so much to the world and continues to resonate across time and space.